Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress with a few show notes. Trying to make the best of this situation, as we all are, and I know you are as well. Thank you for downloading the show. I will try to be your companion and give you some hours of distraction with good entertainment, great conversations with a lot of new people and old returning guests as well. I hope you're enjoying the show. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can email me, john@wordballoon.com. Make sure you follow me on all the social networks, Facebook, John Suntress, Twitter, @JohnWordBalloon, Instagram, WordBalloon. I have my YouTube Word Balloon channel, and I've been doing a bit more video. I hope you will check it out and subscribe and like the videos or dislike the videos, but get involved in some of these live streaming conversations that I'll be having in the days and weeks ahead. Maybe one more spot, and then we'll get to the show. As always, thank you very much for your attention and patience. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, very happy to welcome Paul Dini back to Word Balloon. Paul has returned to the Batman animated series universe with a digital comic, Batman The Adventures Continue, co-written with Alan Burnett, drawn by Ty Templeton, colored by Monica Kubina. It's a beautiful book. There are 2 chapters out, and it's off to a great start. We talked to Paul about the new book, some surprises that are on the way for the 12-issue series, technically the length of 6 comic books when it's an actual paper print, but as far as a digital product, it's weekly, and it's going to be 12 parts. Later, we'll be talking to Alan Burnett in a few days, but now we've got Paul. Of course, beyond talking about the comic book, I did want to ask him about some other animation memories, and certainly his time on Batman the Animated Series, key episodes, Heart of Ice among them. Also wanted to talk to him about some of the other television shows he's worked on, from Marvel Animation to Star Wars, and his own live-action series, Tower Prep. Remember that? Pretty cool stuff. A great conversation with Paul Dini on today's Word Balloon, brought to you by my friends, my executive producers, the League of Word Balloon listeners. That's right. They're financing Word Balloon with their subscriptions via Patreon. You can do it as well. Word Balloon is free. It'll always be free. But if you want to help out the cause and you think what I'm doing here is worth $1 a month to you, is it worth the price of a comic book a month? I hope so. I'm trying to bring you some amazing entertainment, not only during our current status quo, but really just in general. And I do that on the help of the League of Word Balloon listeners. It's patreon.com/wordballoon if you want to subscribe to Word Balloon. I thank you greatly for your help. New members every week, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. It's a tough time, and Aftershock knows that, but they are standing by your local comic shop, and they are standing by you with great entertainment waiting for you. Make sure you call your local comic shop and see what Aftershock graphic novels or collected editions they've got waiting for you from some of the best top names in comics. Marguerite Bennett, Stephanie Phillips, Paul Jenkins, Brian Azzarello, Cullen Bunn, Tim Seeley, Phil Hester, Ryan Kelly. So many great names that have created wonderful books under the Aftershock imprint. They're waiting for you, and they're waiting for you at your website as well. You'll find full story descriptions, preview art pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. All right, let's get into it now. Great conversation, and I thank DC for setting this up, and happy to promote the brand new Batman The Adventures Continue book. Really 2 interesting first chapters. As Batman faces off with Lex Luthor, we get hints of what's to come in the subsequent stories, and we get more details right now, even some spoilers as far as where some of the plots are going to go, with Paul Dini on today's Word Balloon. Paul Dini, welcome back to Word Balloon. It's always great to talk to you, man, and this is really fun that you and Alan and Ty are doing this great comic book series.
Yeah, well, thank you, John. It's fun to be back, and it's a lot of fun to be working with Alan and Ty again. I'm really, really enjoying it.
Had you done any of the comics during the adaptation from the animated series?
Off and on over the years. I mean, way back when I did once they kind of rebooted Batman as Batman and Robin. I did the Batman and Robin Adventures years ago. Ty and I worked on that, and it kind of comes up here and there, and interest in the show and in that version of the characters seems to wax and wane over the last 30 years. Sometimes it's people are really rabid for it. Like, I can't wait to see it again, to like, oh yeah, I remember that show. I watched it when I was a kid. But I think owing to a lot of factors like nostalgia and the revival of the toy line, and just, I don't know. I mean, I have to say it. Some of those episodes are pretty good. The show is sort of back in people's consciousness. I think that also kids who were small at the time want to either rediscover it again or else share it with their kids. And, that's great. It's like having an eternal version of Batman out there. And I'm, very proud to be associated with it.
Well, you've never been that far from the character, and I'm glad. Right. And also you're being incredibly modest because, let's be honest, it's two generations of Batman fans that I think have watched the animated show. And honestly, I'll even confess that I think initially, when it came to the comics, I was always like, okay, I'm sure they're fine, but I'm sure they're probably for a younger audience. Boy, was I wrong. Because yourself and Ty and talking to people like Marty Pasco and Dan Slott and Mark Miller on the Superman comic and stuff. Hey man, those old comics, they're fantastic, and they disappeared from the dollar bins pretty fast in terms of people realizing, wait a minute, these are great Batman, Superman, DC Universe stories.
Oh yeah, Batman Adventures number 12 will cost you a couple grand right there, because
for real.
Well, that was the first appearance of Harley Quinn in a comic book. She had been on the show for months, but her actual first in-print appearance that skyrocketed the value of that comic book. And then we came out with Mad Love 2 months later, and it's like then that whole thing kicked it right off. But I also think that it was great seeing Mark kind of cut his teeth in comics on the Superman book way back then. I thought Ty did some magnificent stories in the Batman animated books. I felt he really fleshed out the world. And I really think that continues kind of up today with things like, Dustin Wynn's and Little Gotham series, Dustin and Derek Friedolf's. I think I look at that whenever they do a new issue of that, and they just had a new graphic novel just come out, and he's kind of doing the like that version of the animated series that came out that is sort of fixed in everybody's head, a very whimsical version of it. And then Scott Murphy, oh my God, what he's been doing with Batman White Knight. I mean, he actually is taking kind of that iteration of the animated characters and putting them in a much more adult and sophisticated and very thoughtful venue. So it's nice to see that those seeds got planted way back when. They're flowering in comics now, and it's just great to go back and do, the basic animated version of the character.
Well, and you guys are succeeding with this book, and I want to mention another creator that I know wasn't a comic reader, but really got into Batman because of what you guys did with the animated series, Devin Grayson. And, and she became such an important Batman writer, I think, because of it and stuff. And I know. I mean, when I've talked to her, she can't say enough about how much, what you guys did meant to her.
Oh yeah. I mean, and she went on and added, such a tremendous amount to the mythos. It's very gratifying to see it all come full circle.
Well, I've enjoyed the first two chapters of the new digital book, Hardware. Great introductory story. A couple mysterious seeds planted in this first story as well.
We're just getting started. We just kicked it off with just Batman and an action adventure. And, Alan and I were going over a story last night, and I'm thinking, like, God, these have gotten amazingly complex in even just 6 issues. They're, 6 issues split into 2 parts. But, I think it's great. We're having a lot of fun, and we're rediscovering there are a lot of places we can take these characters.
Well, and again, because we're all on shutdown right now, I think I'm glad you guys were able to still release this as a digital book. And I know eventually it will likely be a print product for the direct market. But that was adorable that Kevin Conroy read the first chapter and did the video of it. I thought that was terrific. And, you can't help but hear everybody's voices when you're reading these 2 new chapters. It's fantastic.
Well, there's a story, that during World War II, was it Winston Churchill, I believe, who went on the wireless in Britain and read stories or comics or something to kids during the Blitz. And I'm probably getting all the historical facts wrong, but it sort of reminded me, it's made me feel like, okay, we're in wartime against this awful virus. And there's Kevin stepping up as Batman once again to just bring a little joy to people where they need it. It's a very, and so are a lot of people. They're stepping up and they're reading stories, they're performing little things and just trying to make the mood a little bit better. And I got so many kind responses from fans who just loved his version of it. And I talked to him a little bit before he did it and went over the script with him a little bit. He just did a fantastic job. And, you're asking a lot of an actor who does get paid, for performing to do something like this. But I felt like he's just just did a fantastic job. It's just wonderful.
Over the years, how many times have you been able to sit in or want to in the recording booth and watching the actors perform this stuff?
Well, less so now. But originally when I was on the show producing, I would go to every recording and there'd be a group of us. It would be Alan Burnett as producer, Bruce Timm, and usually the director of the respective episode. And also, depending on if the writer was a freelancer, was a staff member or not, the writer would be there also. And it was a very good working unit that way. And Andrea Romano went above and beyond in the casting of the characters and also very interesting ideas for bringing in guest characters, whether they were seasoned voice people or actors we had seen on TV or movies. If there was ever anybody we wanted, she was happy to make the call. We didn't always get them, but she was always happy to make the call. And she did such a fantastic job. It was really, really wonderful to watch her bring the group together, direct the sessions. And I'd say, 99% of the time, the actors all had a really wonderful time. They really got into the spirit of what we were doing, and they all brought their A game. So, back then I did it a lot. Now, less so because I haven't been as involved with Warner Animation. So when I do write a script for them, I trust them to handle it and bring in the folks, and I see it when it's on TV.
Well, Andrea's contribution, can never be, you can't say enough great things about it. And I've had her on the show a couple times, and yeah, amazing. Well, and also, Paul, you're a guy that, goes back, not to age us, but, you started young in animation, and you've seen the evolution in the acting and the writing and everything. And it's like, this is what we were hoping for as little kids, that this stuff would really stay interesting and entertaining. And I can't tell you how many friends who were former comic book readers, I would tell them about the animated series and Justice League, and they'd watch and Superman, and they'd be blown away. And it's like, oh my God, this is like serious. Like they're really acting, and the writing is really good. And it's like, yeah.
Well, writing is something that kind of evolved out of necessity in animation over the years. It's I don't want to, do a whole tutorial on it, but, it goes back to the 20s and 30s when basically animation was pretty much, little palate cleansers during the middle of a movie program. You would watch a couple of features and a cartoon would come on, and basically all you had to do was keep the audience engaged for 6 or 7 minutes with, some slapstick or some funny business. And gradually, as it became more refined, the cartoons got funnier, like Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry, things like that. The stories by Walt Disney and his team got more emotional, a bit more complex, and that sort of that continued on over the following 70 years. And I think for people who grew up with cartoons in the 60s and really loved them in the 60s and 70s, like myself and a lot of the folks I worked with, we would watch Saturday morning TV. We would be engaged by the characters. There'd be something about them we'd like. We just like, the world of cartoons. And yet, the older we got, the more we thought, this could be a lot better. And I remember when I started my career, I'd meet other writers and cartoonists like Tom Ruger, and they'd say like, this stuff isn't very good. We could probably improve it. And at the time we started our career, everything was heavily regimented by networks on Saturday morning television. And it was really like, okay, this is for kids. This is for kids. We're sticking it on. We're selling cereal and toys in between and everything. So just, kind of keep them amused while that's happening, and don't get too adult with anything. So the more animation began kind of trying to break out of that, and then getting into prime time with the things like The Simpsons and when Disney started, their renaissance with Little Mermaid and Aladdin and some of those movies, it really people really began to see, okay, cartoons, there's something magical about them for everybody. And it really is a viable entertainment form. And that's why, you look at online or on TV now, there's so many shows that appeal to both audiences and quite a few that just appeal to adults. And the writing on all of them has gotten really, really good. It's really kept pace with the animation. In some places, the animation is sort of just the kind of the moving backdrop for the jokes and for the characters. I felt with Batman, we had done ample service to both to create a visually exciting world and versions of these characters that the audience really enjoyed, and yet gave them enough to say and enough of an emotional resonance so that anybody really could get involved with the stories and enjoy them.
Back to the hardware story that you opened up the new digital comic with. I always love the matchup specifically of Batman and Luthor. And you guys did that World's Finest crossover movie, obviously. So you had a little bit of that. For me in the comics, and again, I might be wrong because I have a blind spot in the 90s, and I really kind of came back in the late 90s, and No Man's Land. And it was, Bruce and Lex's whole thing in No Man's Land that to me was like, oh, yeah, why? I mean, other than old World's Finest comic books where it was, the Joker and Luthor against Batman and Superman stuff, I don't remember seeing that kind of one-on-one thing. And it's like, these are the two smartest guys in the DC universe. Of course they should be fighting each other. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think they're really good counterpoints to each other because they're pretty equally matched as far as financial resources and power. The thing is, I think when it comes down to cold, sheer genius, Luthor might have the edge because I really do think he's a superior mind, maybe the most brilliant genius in the entire DC universe. But he can't temper it with any sort of deeper emotion. He's got no compassion, and Bruce Wayne doesn't really let a lot of that out, but he does have it. It tempers everything he does as Batman. So I think that where Luthor sees things purely with his mind in a very cold way, Bruce is able to temper his own genius with a little bit, and that gives him more of an edge. And that's why Luthor comes out the loser in their matchups.
And his own ego. I mean, I love the evolution, man. And again, I know you and I were reading the same stuff. We're not that far apart in age. Where those Silver Age stories, and really even obviously Golden Age stories, where Luthor went from the mad scientist, and then Marv Wolfman made him the industrialist, and certainly there was a Trump influence, a Trump as industrialist influence with him, and then to Jeff Johns saying Luthor wanted to be Steve Jobs, and he really wants to be the guy that's going to usher the human race into a new age. At least that's the public persona with a lot of ego in there, and then this Boy Scout shows up from another planet and screws everything up. And I think that's fantastic. I
mean, the thing is, like I also think that there's a little bit of Citizen Kane in Luthor, and the fact that there's somebody can only he can only understand love on his own terms, or he does things. There's always a quid pro quo. When Alan and I were working on the Bible for Superman, one of the background thoughts we had going was that Luthor basically built Metropolis as a way of for his own ego, but basically anybody who's here is grateful to be here, and they're grateful to me. It's a sort of reciprocation of affection that he can understand. I give, I give this to you, you give back to me, and that sort of thing. He doesn't, it's a weird sort of thing. It's almost like his genius goes toward buying loyalty, buying affection. I've taken care of everything, and by the way, that's never going to be enough. You can never give me enough. So, you get into these characters and you can analyze them forever. Alex Ross and I would go on and on when we were writing our large book series together about not only about the DC characters, but Dr. Doom and some of the other characters. And
yes,
one of the things we always sort of came back to in dealing with villains who are not the rank and file street villains, but the guys who have lots of power and control whole countries, is the idea that they don't want to control, they don't want to take over the world. In their mind, they already do. There's nothing that happens in Metropolis that Luthor doesn't know what's going on, and if it does, he's not interested in it because it can't affect him. Doom is the same way. He's sitting in Latveria, but I honestly believe that he believes, I control the world, I control the whole thing. And there are all these little, bits of insurrection around here and there, and they can fight each other. I don't care, and nobody can beat me. I own the world. That sort of thing. It's kind of like a Thanos mindset as well. So, and when
from a universal standpoint,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I stepped on you. Keep going. If you
No. That's all I had.
Well, all right. One last thought about Luthor, and I'll get back to you.
Cliffs, and
say it again. I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
I tend to ramble off cliffs and leave.
No. Tangents are welcome, Paul. It's quite all right. People
right.
love the alleys and avenues that we go. This is Gotham. There's a lot of alleys to go across, man. Come on, that. One last thought about Luthor, but also about Superman, and also the DC universe. The regular DC universe, as opposed to what you guys are doing in your animated universe in this digital story. I know Brian Bendis is a collaborator of yours and a friend. What do you think of Superman exposing his identity to the world?
Oh, I'm a big fan. I mean, I like anything that changes the characters in a positive way and sets them off in a new direction. I think a lot of fans are like that. We love the comfort of the old familiar. We just love it. Like, oh, here's Brainiac again. What's he going to do? Oh, who's that? Bizarro? Bring him on. But at the same time, it's like, how can these characters evolve? Can they grow? Can they be stretched and kind of keep, the trick is engaging the younger readers who are always going to be attracted to superheroes with the older audience that perhaps needs a bit more complexity and a little more shading in their characters. And if you can do that, if you can pull that off, I think you're doing a terrific job. And I think Brian's been doing a really good job with Superman and all the characters that sort of radiate out of that world.
Very cool. Well, again, back to your ongoing series. So as you say, 6 stories, but 12 digital issues, I guess, for this run. Okay.
At least the first.
Okay, yeah, I certainly hope that you guys get an extension because, again, based on the first 2 chapters and what you're teasing moving forward, and very excited to see what Batman and Deathstroke will be doing in subsequent chapters. It's interesting, and also to get a chance, I guess, to, in some way, realign the character into the Bat animated verse as opposed to, his previous animated and comic iterations.
Yeah, that's always been the challenge. I mean, we always had a great interest in Deathstroke going forward in Batman from the get go. But at the time, I'll be honest, the name was very problematic for network television because for kids because Deathstroke, and he's got swords and guns, and he's a mercenary, he's a killer, he's He's Deadpool with just as big a body count and a lot less laughs, So, but it's he is. Well, I always thought he was a great challenge for Batman, and in the ensuing years, with the animated series has been off for a long time. Things have gotten a bit more relaxed, so he's showing up in Teen Titans and they've done direct-to-videos with him. They've done other things with the character. And so he's certainly well known to the audience who grew up with the Batman, the animated series. So what we wanted to do with bringing him in here is like, what is the version of Deathstroke we would have done had we been allowed to use them circa 1997 or so.
Okay.
And then he would have been fresh and new. Would have been his first appearance in animation. It's his first time encountering Batman and his allies. Is he friend? Is he foe? They don't know a lot about him, but we discover that he's been studying them for a while. So let's craft the story from that and hope that when somebody reads it and they go, well, this isn't the Deathstroke of Teen Titans, how do you rectify that? It's like, we're not going to. It's, Teen Titans is world T, this is world B, so,
Sure.
Just multiverse it. So that's how we're going. But again, he is I would say that he seems to be a bit more of a cavalier, a little bit more of a character with a little bit more of a swagger and a little bit more of a dashing attitude to him, at least at first. That's how he comes off to the Bat team. And then later on, we discover that might not be exactly what he's after. That's not who he really is. So there are different levels of complexity to the story, and there's some new characters involved, some characters working with him that we've never seen before. And we felt, just as we've broadened Batman's world with Robin and Batgirl, what does Deathstroke's world look like? And maybe he's got something similar over there.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I read the DC, interview that you and Alan and Ty did, and you make allusions to that. For people who want to read that article, we can go further, you can read it there. But I think it's better to leave it as a mystery and let people discover it in the comic, as far as who might be helping Deathstroke. It's up to you, Paul. It's all good.
Well, that was the thing. We wanted to kind of freshen up things a bit, even with some of our old familiar characters like Joker and some of the others. The Joker Harley relationship at that time was pretty well established. However, when we see Joker, there may be some new elements added to his
relationship with Harley, or
I don't want to say relationship, but
or whatever.
He might have a few new allies. Let me put it that way.
All right, fair enough. Will Harley show up in the story?
Oh yeah, she's around.
Okay.
But again, Harley makes it a bit of a lighter story, and Harley's a lot of fun. I adore her, of course, and I'll use her. I'll write her any chance I get. But this one, we kind of wanted to stretch things a little bit. And I didn't want to go back and rewrite, redo like Harley's Holiday or something like that. Sure. As fun as that is, we really wanted this to be a story about Batman, about the team that he works with, some of the hard choices and mistakes he's made, and the times he's either ignored those or has been forced to go back and, atone for, past sins or something like that. So whereas Harley is seen, here and there, I just wrote a, short scene with her last night. It's the focus is clearly on Batman and his team in this one, and everything else kind of revolves around his choices. Whereas in the past, for the sake of novelty, we'd write a solo Harley story or Harley and Ivy story, and then Batman would be the one who kind of reacts to what they do.
Sure. I am interested, and if it's a spoiler, you don't have to answer this, but. And I've talked to you about this before, that
sure.
when you all did the Arkham City game and kind of changed Harley's look from the Harlequin to sexified Harley, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm cool with all of it. But will we see Ty's version of the new look for Harley?
You mean the Jimmy and Amanda look, the one that's in the comic currently? Yeah. No, we're keeping it pretty traditional.
Okay.
Most of her involvement in the story is in the form of a flashback, and we do kind of, maybe not at something, not visually but tonally, that she's beginning to question some of the choices Joker is making around that time, so that we could, in theory, set up the idea that she's not going to be with him forever. And that's shown in sort of a flashback sequence. But it's the traditional Bruce Timm Harlequin classic jester suit for her appearances throughout this, for the most part.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I was wondering, I was looking at your IMDb page, and at first I thought, oh, maybe you're writing for the new Harley series, but no, obviously your credit is creating Harley, and unless I'm wrong, I just had Patrick Schumacher on the show, and we were talking about it and stuff, and I got to ask, obviously, I love it, and I'm assuming, obviously, as a fan of good humor and good continuity and stuff, you must love the new Harley series as well.
To be honest, I haven't seen it. I mean, I just have not gotten around to it, and I don't have DC Universe. I mean, it was one of those things. I said, oh, I got to get that and check it out, and I just never got around to calling the service and calling it up, and so I've been remiss on. Unless I'm sort of dragged into it, like, hey, come to the premiere of Birds of Prey. It's like, oh, okay, sure. And so I went. I loved that, and that was a lot of fun. I've seen clips of the Harley series, very funny, and a lot of the it looks great and everything. I don't know.
No, it's cool, man.
I didn't get the service, and I've just been busy. I've been time I have a chance to sit down and binge TV. Like I went in the other night and watched like 2 episodes of Ozarks, and my wife Misty's really into it. And then it's like, okay, well, back to writing. And cool. I've just been I'm working on a few things I'm just sort of obsessed with at the moment, and that's what I'm doing.
I understand, and Misty is great, by the way, and
she is.
That's fantastic, man. Seriously, and classic stage magician. I love. I think it's fantastic that you guys are together, man. It's that's really cool. So, 15 years, man. Jeez.
What's that? Oh, thank
15
you.
15 years, right?
Yeah. 15 years this Halloween. You marry a magician, it's got to be on Halloween. I'll tell you that.
I understand, dude. I totally understand. There's too much TV to watch. Too much great TV. And,
a lot of times people have been very kind, and they've got me on the Twitter or something. They'll send me a note like, "Dude, I really loved Harley Quinn last night. It was so funny. I mean, I love all the episodes." And they're effusive in their praise, and I always write them back, and they say, "Oh, thanks a lot." And then I'll try and CC Shane Glines or somebody who works on the show and say, okay, "Dude, you got a big hit there." So, I mean, I think it's great that people are digging it. And like I said, I can't say I've watched more than a 3-minute clip of it, but I really, I thought it was great. A lot of fun.
Well, when you get to it, I think you'll be happy. But I am interested in the difference in terms of writing comics versus writing animation, and how much compression in one or the other is there compared to the other. You know what I mean? In terms of like, from a plot standpoint or whatever, in terms of what you're able to do in a comic versus a 20-minute cartoon, or as we've talked about before, your work on Justice League Action. Because even though it was technically a 15-minute show, they were really like, 9 minutes, 12 minutes of actual story?
Yeah. With that show, it was more like write each episode as if it's an act 3. Like we get the setup, we get the first 2 minutes of act 1 in a traditional, animation half-hour format. So who the good guy is, who the bad guy is, what the conflict is, and then skip right to the action sequence in Act 3, and then with a wrap up, and at the same time make it funny. And you can also pepper in little bits here and there, but of character work. But it wasn't like, I say, a Justice League episode, which is very intricately crafted as far as, for quite a few of them would be part of a seasonal arc. So you would have to play service to what's going on in the overarching story that we're telling this season. Also, here's a Batman Wonder Woman story. Here's where we left their relationship last time. Here's how a villain, impacts that relationship. Here are some other characters who could help. One of them doesn't work very well with Batman, let's say. The other one, hates Wonder Woman, but they have to, the whole thing. You go back and forth. Yeah. And through this, you have to put in, character arcs and bits of action that come up and set pieces. So with Justice League Action, we had characters who you kind of jump on board knowing what they're going to do. You got Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. You're not really going to get into the bits of the Wonder Woman Batman relationship that was started in JLU, you just can't service it in time. Yet that said, you can have the characters have elements of that that working relationship, that spirit they have within each, working together. You know what they're going to do, and you know that when an enemy shows up, Batman's going to be testy and grouchy, and Wonder Woman's going to be pretty straightforward, and the tactician and Superman's going to be there for the muscle. So, and hopefully within that format, you can have a lot of fun. But those were simple seeming stories, and they played funny, but they were pretty labor intensive to work out, at least at first. And so there was a lot of compression that went in there. I mean, I would write scripts, and I would bring them in at 12 pages, and Alan would say, cut it down to 9. And it's like, which characters do you want to lose? And I'd say, and he'd say, well, keep all of them, but just, so it got to be a bit challenging.
And man, they're great though, man. I'm telling you. And I was worried too, because I'm like, 15 minutes. And I'm like, I know, again, I'm a broadcaster. I'm like, I know there's going to be commercials in those 15 minutes. And I really did kind of clock it. I'm like, these are like 9 or 10 minutes long, and they're great. I mean, my God, man. I mean, I know that going back to, again, animated shorts of the past decades and stuff, that's what they were working with pretty much. But yeah, honestly, I'm really disappointed that they're not airing anywhere Justice League Action, and they kind of got buried on Cartoon Network. It's like, oh man, this is a missed opportunity. You guys did a hell of a job with that show.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I thought the direction was good. I liked a lot of the stories. I felt that Shane Glines did a great job on the character design.
Yes.
And I just felt that it was one of those stories that, shows that occasionally happens. Yeah, we're all behind this. And then in the time that between it's purchased and it airs, there's a change. There's a different, shift in thinking. And then suddenly your star vehicle becomes the, unloved stepchild of programming. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, you can run it at 4 a.m. I mean, people are.
Oh my God, it was, because it was 6 a.m. here in Chicago. So it was 4 a.m. your time. Good Lord, man.
Yeah.
I thought you guys did like a West Coast feed, so at least it would air 6 a.m. West Coast time. God damn, that's horrible, man. Well, again, I hope it finds a new home. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I know next to nothing about HBO. The HBO service.
HBO Max, which is starting next month. Yes.
Yeah, and hopefully there can be some shows that were ignored at first that find a home there, like Justice League Action and Tower Prep, to put in a plug.
My man, I was going to ask you about Tower Prep, because shame on me, I didn't watch it, and I've read the descriptions. I'm a huge fan of The Prisoner, and I can't help but think that might have been an influence in what you were doing with Tower Prep.
To a degree, and also my own experiences, like when I was around the character Ian's age, my folks just said, "You're kind of trouble. Get in the crate. We're shipping you off to a private school."
Jesus.
And it's like, and they dumped me in the middle of a forest, at a private school. And it's like, I got to wear a uniform, and I got to do this, and I want to get out of here. And so a lot of that was just taken that first miserable year of boarding school, and basically cartooning it without being putting it in the realm of caricature, where everything is larger than life, and you take it into a fantastic realm. We had such a great cast, and they were really on board. And man, we had up in Canada where we produced it, we had the entire crew leaving other shows or passing up work on other shows to do season 2. And then we found out, and we didn't really find out there was no season 2. It's just sort of like, well, maybe not this month. Well, when? Well, we're waiting for more money to come. It was like, it wasn't definite, like canceled, find other work. It was more like, well, for like a whole year. And fans would say, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And I'd say, I really don't know. Nobody can, make a decision about this. So it's still around, and I guess it runs on, it's available for purchase or something, but maybe again, HBO Max will find it and dust it off and air it and, give it a new life. So
did it have a final episode that would at least finish the season, or was it left open with a cliffhanger?
We did a final episode that left the characters kind of at a crossroads. Do we escape? We've escaped and we can go forward, or we can go back. what do we do? So the episode 2 would have, season 2 would have, the first episode would have been dealing with the ramifications of the choice they eventually made. And we had, and that was a really disheartening thing, because we'd go into meetings and we'd hear okay, for season 5, what are we doing? And okay, and this would be like with a network, for season 5, we're doing this, but we're playing season 3, season 5, and it's like, are you really going to pick up the show? Oh yeah.
Jesus, that's the television game
for time. They're incredible. It's like, okay, we're done. Yeah.
Wow, man. That's I'm just shrugging right now, Paul. What can you say? I do understand. That's and then
it's like they did. Nope. I had the idea for Tower Prep for a long time. I pitched it everywhere. I got nothing but radio silence. And then Cartoon Network said, "We like this. Come, we see this. We believe in this. We're doing this. Shift in our programming. Let's do this." So it's something that never would have seen the light of day anywhere else. And we got to do 13 episodes. I got to work with an incredible team. I got to work with Darren Morgan and Glenn Morgan. They're so wonderful, and all the actors were terrific. So I really can't be sore about that. I got to do what they let me do what I wanted to do. It would have been great to go on, but hey, that's showbiz.
I'm happy, and that's you've certainly been at the game long enough that you're happy that it at least got on the air and your concept came to life. So that's cool. I also liked your conversation with Kevin Smith, I think on Fat Man on Batman a couple of years ago, where you mapped out. Was it for Bruce going to Bloodhaven and kind of a Tower Prep sort of idea?
I don't know. I think that has gotten to be kind of a very present trope in a lot of fiction now. And I think that, I think boarding school has always been a very natural setting to set stories around, because it is ultimately is about control. It's about structure, and it's about how the outsider comes into the situation and has to make peace and has to survive within that situation. I mean, Harry Potter, the whole thing. I think it's just been something in the zeitgeist for the last 25 years, however long Harry Potter has been around. And that's really, and of course, before then, you've got other shows, other book series that deal with characters, kids, of course, in those situations. So I just think there's superhero stories, there's pirate stories, there's ghost stories, and there's the prep school story. So I'd gone to prep school, spent 4 years there, and I wrote down everything, and I thought, okay, now I get to tell my version of it. And I think that when Kevin and I started talking about it, I think putting those characters, the Batman characters in a setting like that was just sort of a natural. That's also when you sit down and you riff with somebody who's got a great imagination like Kevin, you just cannot stop yourself. It's like when I sit down with Alex Ross or with Alan or with Tom Ruger, we just start talking. The people I've been lucky enough to work with over the years, it's like playing tennis. You hit an idea back, and then you hit and then before you know it, you're in Wimbledon. And it just is a thing that happens. So hanging out and doing Kevin's podcasts, the good ideas flow, man. You just start talking, and out they come. It all comes from a shared affection with the characters. So. It's a natural. And I think that a lot of creative people have gravitated toward that since then. I know there are at least, there are several versions of the DC characters in some form of high school or academies. There's, of course, there's superhero girls on TV, which I also have to watch at some point. And because I hear Harley's in there too. And then there's the new Gotham High series, which looks great, and and stuff like that. So I think it's just something that sort of naturally appeals to creative people to put your characters, like younger versions of your character, in a situation like that. I
got to ask you about the one classic Justice League Unlimited that it seems to resonate still with fans. This Little Piggy, and it was such a great, crazy story, and Man, you got Batman, Zatanna, and Wonder Woman. What's better? Or Wonder Pig, I suppose, in that story. But
yeah.
Man, that's fantastic. I mean,
Well, there you go. That's me and Dwayne McDuffie and Bruce Timm and maybe Rich Fogel. I'm having trouble recalling exactly who was all in the meeting, but all just sort of sitting around and like, okay, we want to bring in Cersei, so she's a Wonder Woman villain, and
yes.
We haven't seen Zatanna in a long time, and maybe we can go back and then just boom, 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 idea. I mean, that's when it's the most fun. That and the Christmas story that we did, that was a lot of fun too. Where what does a Justice League do on Christmas Day? Batman, nothing, stays home. Wonder Woman, we never even mentioned what she did. I actually remember the meeting saying, "What does Wonder Woman do? Does she just?" I think we said, "Oh, she just goes back to Themyscira and is some sort of solstice sort of, time off, basically. She just goes and celebrates the changing of the seasons, probably a peaceful time where she just sort of, takes a few days off and recharges her battery and meditates and comes home." And I thought that's good. I mean, I don't know what kind of animation entertainment is in there, but maybe we can just sort of keep that in the back of our heads. So I don't know. Certainly better than the comic book story they did years ago, which showed what Amazons actually do around Christmas time, which was really weird.
I don't remember that one, and that's fine. I do remember a Batman Christmas story you did, and I've mentioned it to you before. It's one of my favorite stories you ever wrote, and it was it was with Don. It was the Joker driving around in the 4x4.
Oh yeah, Don Kramer.
Don Kramer and Tim Drake's tied up in Christmas lights and Christmas stickers and everything, and the Joker's driving around
in the back of the car. Oh yeah, that was pretty wacky. Yeah,
dude, that's seriously. It's because it's so hard to do a great one shot. That of course was the tradition for decades, but it was so great to get this great 22 page story and how's Tim going to get out of this situation? It's seriously, man, it's still one of my favorite stories.
Well, I like that because it's a chance for Tim to be kind of has to force himself to be a step ahead of the Joker, and he really has to think of the Joker not just as a menace, but as a I got to what is this guy? What appeals to this guy other than murder? Well, there's comedy, there's his ego, there's and once he hits on the fact, this weird out of the blue remark about the Marx Brothers, he realizes he's got him because Joker, my own take on Joker is that he loves comedy. He's an expert on it. He studied it. He's stolen most of the jokes that he's used, from better comedians. But he's also kind of got that pontificating expert tone of voice that if somebody was going to talk about classic comedians and they were wrong, he would go out of his way to correct them before he shot them for being stupid, but because he values his own knowledge among everything else. So that seemed to be the best way to distract him. And, and it showed that Tim could really operate under extreme pressure like that. It was just tremendous fun. I also liked him getting hit by a truck at the end. He had it coming. Sure.
Not
Tim. What? Yes.
Say it again.
The Joker got hit by a truck. Not.
Oh
Tim.
yeah.
I gave him the Wile E. Coyote exit. It's sort of like whoa. It would have been too far having him hold up a little sign that said, "Mommy" or something, and have his eyes do that Chuck Jones shrink down to nothing before the truck hit him. But no, I did consider it.
You and Don nailed it, man. That was a great story. Absolutely. I saw on your IMDb page something, and sometimes these things aren't real, but Arkham Tales of a Dark Knight or the Dark Knight. Can
you hang on just one second?
Oh yeah.
Deal with that.
Life gets in the way. It's okay.
Yep. I have no idea what that is. I think that's made up. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I never heard of that. I mean, somebody asked me about it. I went on IMDb and I checked it out. I'm going what the? Never heard of this. No. But I mean, I get attached to a lot of stuff. I have no idea how I got attached there. I got attached to a Disney feature that was, a huge Disney feature, and I'm going like, what? What the hell? I'm not writing this. But for literally years, my name was listed as a co-writer of a movie, and I'm going like, it ain't happening. I don't how did this get in there? But once it's out there, it's out there. But
And all right, I know a few animated credits that I do know that you were involved with, right? Like Hulk, Agents of Smash, some of the other Marvel television shows, and the Drake Bell Spider-Man cartoon that was so good. You had so you had a little Spider-Verse moment before the full-length movie.
Yeah, we kind of stuck our toe in there. What we did not impact anyway on what was done in the Spider-Verse. It was just sort of like, okay, let's do a Spider-Verse story. I don't know that it didn't impact on it, but I have a feeling that it's just such a natural territory, and it was just sort of whirling around among the different Spider folk at that point. Like, okay, let's do a Spider-Verse big multi-parter, and then they did the movie, and that's just one of those things that just sort of happened around the same time. I mean, it was a lot of fun to do. You take Spider-Man, you put him in any situation, and he always kind of works, and however you change up the character.
That was the beauty of Marvel Team Up all those years, man. You could take Spider-Man and put him anywhere, and he's a fish out of water pretty much anywhere that isn't Queens, so that's okay. And also that Avengers episode that you did as well.
Yeah. I liked Team Up comics when I was a kid. It was fun. I mean, the regular Spider-Man book, I was sort of like an ongoing saga, and you'd read it all the time. It's to see like, okay, it's like he's fighting Doc Ock, in these issues, but here's a shadowy bad guy, and he's coming into the picture, and of course they bring in Sandman for a one shot or something. So that was like the ongoing saga of Spider-Man, and I read that pretty constantly. But I really did enjoy team up books like Marvel Team Up 2-in-1 and Supervillain Team Up. I enjoyed a lot too.
Oh God, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Dr. Doom and Submariner and
Submariner and Red Skull, whoever they put him with. That was fun. It was improbable, but again, like the villain books, the solo villain books didn't seem to last very long because I think they sort of ran out of ideas. Like, what? How long can you do these characters and make it interesting without having to bring in the Fantastic Four? I mean, it's like, what does Dr. Doom do next issue? He, goes to a budget meeting for Latveria and then does his wash and then, takes his wolf out for a walk or whatever Betty has. I have to take my wolf out for a walk. Hang on just a second.
Oh, by all means, man, I'll say, got to polish the Doom bots while in between fights, so I can appreciate that. He's taking his dogs out, everybody.
Sorry.
Not at all.
Go outside, so there we go.
No problem, man. It's all right. It's like I said, life gets in the way of podcasts sometimes. It's totally cool. Only a couple more things, Paul, and I really appreciate your time. I also wanted to know about, I'm looking at my list right now. Well, back to what you were saying about the digital books and everything and moving forward. There's a hint of a character in chapter 1, and I don't know if that was Slade or a different character. And I assumed it was a different character. Maybe not. There was kind of a shot of somebody in the shadows, and we saw a little red outlining his eyes.
Who do you think it is?
Well, I'll be honest. I kind of think maybe we'll be seeing Jason Todd show up, and I'd be love to possibly see the Red Hood. I don't know if that obviously that was never addressed in the animated series. You go right from Dick Grayson to Tim, but I don't know. I really don't know.
Well,
you don't have to spoil.
I think we kind of, when we did the animated series, and we aged up Dick Grayson and made him Nightwing, and we wanted to kind of bring in a new younger Robin. We felt like, well, for one thing, Tim Drake had debuted in the books not too long before, so he was the current Robin. And we also felt like, can we actually go back and tell the Jason Todd story, knowing that it has that tragic finale. And is that something that we actually could even get away with within the format of doing afternoon television? And at that time, it had gone to Saturday morning television, where, I'll be honest, the edict that we were getting from the network we were on at the time was for, shows that dealt with the more colorful, more extreme villains. I don't even think we could have done something with a tragic edge like Heart of Ice, from the first season.
Yes.
Whereas if we were going to do Firefly, that was fine, or a lighter Joker and Harley story, that was fine. But to do Jason and tackle that and rethink that for what it had to be for our show, I don't think we liked the idea of it very much. And we had also taken bits and pieces of Jason's history and given them over to Tim, which was something that we had to, consider also. And so there just was no time for it. It wasn't like we said it'll never, ever exist within that world. But in coming up with these stories, we're thinking, like, what if that had happened? What effect would that have had on Batman and the team? So this was a chance to go back in and tell that story within the parameters of the world that Alan and Bruce and Eric Radomski and I had come up with.
Okay, well, that's great. God, I hope that means that Jason's coming. That's great.
Yeah, Jason's come on. Yeah.
That's wonderful, man. No, I'm glad to hear that. And certainly that was, I'm sure everyone's eyes popped up when we saw the little red around the shadowy figure with his eyes and kind of looking like Dick and everything. And honestly, do you see a problem? I think it's great that I understand from a time line standpoint, it's hard to reconcile. All right, how old is Bruce? How old is Dick? Where do Tim and even Damian fit into the current status quo and stuff? I don't think there is such a thing as too many Robins. I think they are such distinct characters, and especially that Jason is one of Batman's big regrets of how things turned out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that in the case of Batman, that there was. We often don't talk too much about the split between Bruce and Batman, but I think that in this case, Bruce was the deciding factor in Jason, and had Batman made that choice, he would have made a different one. So we're basically seeing kind of a war in Batman himself between head and heart when it comes to Jason. And it's been very interesting dealing with him in that way. Like, Bruce's heart says this, Batman's head tells him this, and Jason is caught somewhere in the middle.
Interesting. That's great, man. I'm glad you mentioned Heart of Ice, because I think it's fantastic that you guys brought this element to Mr. Freeze, this great regret. And and Michael and Sarah sold it so well as an actor, I think, in that story. And yeah, man, and now moving forward, Mr. Freeze is a much more tragic character than he ever was.
Yeah, I mean, I think he needed something. I mean, there was a sort of a Shakespearean quality to him in the earlier in the 60s show with George Sanders and in particular, and then when they brought the character back, he kind of lost his focus. He was he was just the guy with the ice gun and the goofy accent, and depending on who played him,
Eli Wallach and Otto Preminger, both
one of them kept saying Sanders. "Crazy Batman, crazy," and I think that was Otto Preminger. It was one of those characters that just what I liked about the original 60s series is for the most part, he had less. The other characters had more continuity. It was always Burgess Meredith playing the Penguin. It was always Cesar Romero was the Joker. They would switch up the others occasionally, like John Astin playing the Riddler. I remember watching that and going, "What?
Oh, yeah.
Why was there the Riddler?" I had no problem with Eartha Kitt. I thought she was just as good. It's just like, oh, hey, there's Catwoman. She just always just read as Catwoman to me. But the different Mr. Freezes, even though the look was kind of the same, I think it was less a problem with continuity of performance as it was in the writing. Suddenly he was just the wacky guy with the ice gun. And
Sure.
And when we came up with the take on him for the animated series, Bruce and I sat down and said, let's make him tragic. Let's make him, he's got this, if he's dead to emotion, he's got to have an Achilles heel. He's got to have the one thing in him that's going to make him break down and cry. Even though, he doesn't seem to have that, he has to. And then we ultimately made that thing Nora. And it worked pretty well.
Absolutely, man. Now, you also did some great animated Star Wars stuff, and do you see yourself beyond, is that a possibility in the future? If there's, I know they're running the latest season of the Clone Wars. They had recorded the audio track years ago, and now obviously with Disney Plus, they're finally giving it to us. But do you see yourself returning to Star Wars anytime soon or ever?
Well, you never say never, but it's like I think it's unlikely because, again, it all depends on who's running the show. And in the situation that it's the producers will have their picks of writers and the people they feel very comfortable with. And a lot of those shows are generated within a room among the writers who show up, day to day, week after week. So if my rule has been that every time a Star Wars project comes my way, I'm very happy for it and very grateful for it. I love jumping in and working with the team doing it. I spent a long time early in my career working up at Skywalker Ranch on Droids and Ewoks, the shows they were doing, way back when they were their toe in the water. And it was, and I know what it's like. You work with your team and everything. And then friends of mine went on to do Clone Wars, and they would call me up and they say, well, you've worked on some Star Wars. You want to take a shot at this? And I really, really enjoyed it. I really loved that version of the world. I feel like it's a great working in animation, especially with a great team of artists and writers. And Dave Filoni, I think, is a really wonderful team leader in many ways. You're very much like the characters yourself. You're like a scrappy little strike force, and you can do some great things because the pressure is off. You don't have to do a big, huge movie every year and a half that has all this gravitas and all this lore and legend attached to it. And if I make one wrong step with Han and Luke, does the movie destroyed? And the whole thing. But with the Clone Wars and all the other animated projects, I think that's when Star Wars becomes a breeze. You can just be very creative. You can, again, let the ideas flow. And, I've had a wonderful time working on that. So long story short is, if I ever have a chance to do another one, I'd happily do one. But at this point, I really don't see myself signing on, for a long tour of duty back in the Star Wars world.
As we wrap up, are there any animated projects that you can telegraph to us to look forward to?
I'm not going to say there aren't any, but I'm saying I can't talk about it. I will keep watching Creep Show on Shudder. That's a lot of fun. I've been doing that for the last season, and I really enjoy that.
Okay, man, I don't have Shudder. You can't have every streaming service. That's great to hear, though. Because
I don't have DC Universe, and you don't have Shudder, so that's it. So we're equal. Yeah.
That's great. I'm assuming, obviously, Stephen King Creep Show, and that it's under that universe or idea and Tales from the Crypt kind of stories, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Creep Show stories. For legal purposes, we'll say they're Creep Show stories, of course.
Yeah. When I first the first projects I did in live action were for the producers of Tales from the Dark Side did a companion show called Monsters, and I wrote a few of those. And so every time I've gone into live action, I find myself dipping back into. I've never written a police procedural show. I've never really written sitcom stuff, but I always do things like Lost. That's a bizarre show, and then Tower Prep, another bizarre show, and now Creep Show. It's been a lot of fun. And that I just did sort of as a goof with my old college roommate, Steve Langford, who's had a very long career writing sitcoms and movies and everything. And he just said, they're doing Creep Show. You want to write a few? And I said, yeah. So we've just been working on those. That's been a lot of fun because we just get together, hang out, and write whatever, vile nonsense comes into our head.
That's excellent, man. Geez, and I don't want to keep, because we agreed to an hour, and I don't want to keep you. please come back, because there's a million more things that we could talk about. And truly, congratulations on the career you've had so far and continue to have, because you've seen a lot of evolution in both animation and live action. And you're a vital part of that, Paul, and we really appreciate it, speaking for the audience.
John,
you always have fresh ideas, and that's great, and may you have many more, and we get to watch whatever it is you've got cooking, whether it's more Creepshow or even some of these other animated projects you got coming up. And, of course, the new Batman digital comic that you and Ty and Alan are doing. It's great stuff, and I thank you, as always, for coming back.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
Paul Dini. Man, I was surprised Sunday night watching Turner Classic Movies and saw the Floyd Norman documentary from a couple of years ago, and also was shocked to see Paul Dini on there. Of course he's on there, because as a longtime animation guy, he certainly is well aware of Norman's work, and of course Norman's time at Hanna-Barbera, likely cross paths with Paul Dini over the years. Really great stuff. What a career, and honestly, never run out of things to talk about with Paul Dini, and looking forward to our next conversation down the road. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Word Balloon. It's a busy week this week. We're going to do some live streaming as I'm recording tonight. We'll be talking with Rob Liefeld very late tonight, 9 p.m. Pacific, 11 Central, midnight on the East Coast. So if you're a swing shift person and still working, maybe you'll catch us. Or, of course, if you're working from home, it's something that you might want to watch as you're not off to bed, or catch the replay of the next day. It'll be on Word Balloon's YouTube channel live, on my Facebook page live as well. I hope you will join us for the conversation with Rob Liefeld tonight live. And I've got a few other interviews already planned. It's a busy week in the best way. And I appreciate everyone from the comics community coming on Word Balloon and sharing their thoughts with us. Some fun memories, but also giving us some words of hope during this tough time. I hope you're enjoying all the entertainment that Word Balloon has been trying to bring you in the last few weeks or so. And we'll continue as long as we need to, and certainly beyond the current status quo when things get back to some level of normal. Thanks again for listening today. Thank you to my sponsors, Aftershock Comics. Again, a great collection of books waiting for you to entertain you during this strange time. You know, if you're looking for something new to pick up, Aftershock has got you covered with great genre-bending books that deserve your attention from some of the top names in comics. Whether it's Cullen Bunn or Tim Seeley or Garth Ennis or Marguerite Bennett, and newcomers as well like Matthew Klickstein and Stephanie Phillips. So many great writers that have and artists that have come up with incredible books. Let's not forget the great Juan Doe, who's doing his own books and also working with Cullen Bunn on their Dark Arc series, for example. Really neat stuff. Donny Cates, of course, has Baby Teeth. Marguerite Bennett has Animosity. Some of the classic Aftershock titles. My buddy Tim Seeley has Dark Red. All waiting for you at their website. Check it out now. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages of art at AftershockComics.com. Thanks a lot for listening. Make sure you join us tonight for that live stream discussion with Rob Liefeld. Also on the Oh Yeah podcast side with Art and Franco. Franco, me, and Skokie Spidey have been rewatching movies. So if you're looking for something fun, we recently did Max Headroom. 20 Minutes into the Future, the original hour-long pilot from 1985, the first time we ever saw Max Headroom, the origin story of Max. Pretty fun stuff. We've got a new one coming up this week. We haven't set the day yet, but we will be rewatching the David Hasselhoff 90s classic, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I love that movie. A lot of pedigree in that movie. David Goyer wrote that movie. Did you know that? Pretty neat stuff for a TV movie. And we'll be looking at it again and laughing with it with you. So check that out soon. Until next time, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions. Copyright 2020. Stay safe, stay healthy.